It had been 3 days since Ponyville was attacked by yet another pony-turned-monster, which was dealt with by the mysterious alien hero Tom Decade, or, as he preferred to be addressed when he was armored, Kamen Rider Zeo. Tom had suffered some moderate injuries during his last fight, but it wasn't anything overtly dangerous, and he was almost back to 100%. Ow. 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 Tom winced repeatedly as a comb was repeatedly run through his hair, getting stuck on many tangled ends. "My goodness, what do you do with this hair of yours?" asked Rarity, the one subjecting him to this painful preening. Ow, don't do, ow, anything special, ow, just, it does what it wants the most of, take it easy, Tom complained. "And there, I think I've tamed this unruly mane of yours," Rarity cheered, before Tom's hair instantly reverted back to its previous state with a pop. "Ugh!" Rarity stamped her hoof in rage. Tom just stared, an eyebrow raised. She then realized what she was doing and regained her composure, albeit with a light blush on her face. "I'm terribly sorry for that outburst, but I want to make you look good, darling," Rarity explained. "I heard that you saved both Rainbow Dash and myself from monsters, and for that I am grateful," she continued, giving a small bow. "I merely wish to repay you." Tom was still a bit sore from the attempt at grooming, but he wasn't mad at Rarity. She was showing gratitude, even if his scalp wasn't as appreciative. "It's good that you're happy, but I'm just glad you're okay," Tom replied. "I doubt being a monster's puppet was at all enjoyable for you." Rarity just stopped for a second, then shook her head rapidly. "I'd rather not think about that dreadful situation, thank you." She then turned and grabbed some measuring tape. "Now, let's get those measurements." Okay." Tom simply stood up and stuck his arms out in a T-pose. Rarity chuckled. "Darling, I'm afraid you misunderstand," Rarity said, explaining. "If I am to get your measurements, I need you to, remove what you're wearing now." "Huh?" Tom asked with a slight dread in his voice. He then noticed a cobalt-colored magic aura on his jacket, and his jacket was moving off. Tom quickly moved to hold it in place. "No, don't take my jacket!" Tom screamed and then huddled into a ball. No. Rarity didn't say anything, but, now incredibly worried about her savior, tried to stand him up and walk him back to the castle. And that's another batch of shortcakes in the oven," Mrs. Cake sang to herself as she went about making plenty of cakes for the upcoming Hearts and Hooves festivities. This time of year was especially important as many couples came looking to buy baked goods and treats to share with loved ones. And this year was no different. She had even started making special cakes themed around the holiday. But there was a concern she had. That being Pinkie Pie, her assistant in the bakery, who was also like a daughter to her. She had returned from a trip yesterday, but had been uncharacteristically evasive. After she had finished up her baking, she went upstairs to check on her tenant. "Pinkie, dear, is everything okay?" she asked as she knocked on the door. There was no response. "I'm coming in," she said, opening the door slowly. But what she saw immediately made her stop in her tracks. The room was disheveled, and various parts of it were destroyed, many things having gnashes in them like claws. And Pinkie herself was nowhere to be seen, the window in her room being wide open. This led Mrs. Cake to the obvious conclusion. "Carrot, call the police! Pinkie's been full-napped!" Meanwhile, Rarity had returned Tom to Twilight's castle, and they were seated at the table along with Twilight and Spike. Tom was visibly shaking, and Rarity was still very apologetic. Twilight was trying to calm Tom down, while Spike was serving tea and attempting to flatter Rarity. "Darling, I am so sorry," Rarity apologized. Tom just shied away, keeping his head down. Twilight was next to Tom, her hand on his shoulder. Tom just couldn't look at anyone right now. "Just take deep breaths, okay?" Twilight reassured Tom. "Yeah, I'm okay," Tom squeaked out. I don't like having to undress around other people." Rarity looked mortified. Did he think she was going to do something inappropriate? Did something like that happen to him? Many questions raced in her mind. "Rarity, you weren't going to try to hurt me, were you?" Tom asked. Rarity recoiled at the suggestion. "What? What possible reason would I have to do that?" Tom hesitated, but shook his head. It's nothing. I'm sorry I overreacted. What could make Tom act like that? I doubt it's as simple as being shy. Twilight pondered to herself. At that time, Mrs. Cake had burst into the room, in a state of panic. She rushed over to Twilight and grabbed her by the shoulders. Twilight! Pinkie! Messy room! Not there! She shrieked hysterically, shaking Twilight in the process. Mrs. Cake! Calm down! Twilight said, her words distorted by the shaking. She then noticed Tom sitting nearby and marched over to him. It's you! The armored hero from the other day! Certainly you can help me! She started. Huh? Tom asked. Mrs. Cake joined them at the table, explaining her plight. So this Pinkie person was kidnapped? Tom asked. I found her room in an utter wreck and, oh dear Celestia, why? She sobbed. Twilight patted the weeping baker on the back while Rarity stood up. Rarity, where are you going? Twilight asked. I just need to freshen myself up, darling, she replied, walking off. Tom then stood up and walked over to Mrs. Cake. He leaned down and looked her in the eye. I'll find Pinkie. I promise you. His statement was met with a bone-crushing embrace. You are a blessed child. Thank you so much. Just then, Rarity stepped out into the kitchen, dressed to the nines in a scarlet overcoat, pink sashes darting around it to accentuate her waist and forming a bow at her chest. Topping her head was a wide-brimmed hat, colored purple a shade darker than her violet mane. The hat had a ribbon tied into a bow the same color as those on the coat. To me, Mrs. Cake, it sounds like you've got a mystery on your hands. A real doozy of one, too. A missing baker. Sounds like they were trying to take the cake. Or pie, rather. Tom and Twilight were both speechless at the sudden wardrobe change, while Spike gazed at her utterly enamored. Now I must away. The crime scene waits for no mare, Rarity dramatically declared as she headed out, Twilight pursuing. Tom noticed Spike was still frozen in place. Yeah, so hold down the fort? He shrugged before heading off himself. Sugar Cube Corner was flanked by all manner of law enforcement and paparazzi. An outright kidnapping in Ponyville was rare, and with the recent attacks from monsters still fresh in every pony's memories, tensions were higher than ever. Rainbow Dash was flying above and had flown closer to see what was going on. As she did, she saw Tom, Twilight, and Rarity coming towards her. But she immediately felt a sense of annoyance when she saw what Rarity was wearing. Oh, geez, not the Shadow Spade shtick again, she groaned. Tom turned back to Rarity, raising an eyebrow. Shadow Spade? Some lame detective novels that Rarity likes, Rainbow replied. Lame? Rarity interjected indignantly. I will have you know that Shadow Spade's mysteries are far more compelling and sophisticated than Daring Do. Really? How could any pony enjoy a story without real action in it? Rainbow barked back. Twilight, in her increasing irritation, decided to employ the Royal Canterlot voice. We have bigger things to worry about right now! Twilight's voice echoed out, immediately drawing attention from every pony around her. Tom, meanwhile, was covering his ears. In the future, please warn me the next time you're going to do that, Tom winced. Twilight just nodded, and the group went to investigate the scene. Pinkie's bedroom had been wrecked by whatever had happened. Large gashes were carved into hardened furniture, various popped balloons and damaged party favors littered the floor, and her bedding was reduced to piles of shredded fabric. What happened in here? It looks like a manticore trampled all over the place, Rainbow noted. The group split up, examining the destroyed room. Tom stepped on a piece of paper and picked it up. What's this? Hearts and Hooves dating party? He read. Oh, I know those. My parents made me go to one. She started, but stopped and covered her mouth, a blush forming on her face. Tom just sighed. So, what is it then? He asked. They're a party for lonely mares and stallions to hopefully find a special some pony, Rainbow Dash replied. Though I've never been to one. But why would Pinkie Pie have a flyer for it? Tom asked. If I may, it could be that Pinkie is involved in organizing these parties, Rarity answered. Parties are her specialty. Ahem. The sound of an irritated older mare clearing her throat filled the room. The group turned around to see an annoyed-looking police pony staring at them. She had a cyan coat and dark blue mane under her hat. Oh, Tom was at a loss for words. Oh my gosh, Twilight exclaimed. I was so concerned about Pinkie I forgot about the police. I am so sorry, Officer Miranda writes, she replied. I have special orders to allow you to investigate, though it seems that really didn't matter, she grunted. So, find anything? Well, this. Tom handed the officer the flyer. I had heard there'd been a rash of folks going missing at these parties as of late, she explained. The group looked at each other. Is it possible there's a connection? Rarity asked. Who knows? I wouldn't be caught dead at one of those things, the nearby officer shrugged. Rarity thought to herself for a moment. So it seems the common thread is a dating party. In that case, I propose we investigate firsthand. Tom, Twilight, and Rainbow all looked mildly afraid. As day turned to night, the local dating party had started. Tom, Twilight, Rarity, and Rainbow Dash all approached the venue, the meeting hall in the center of Ponyville. Twilight and Rainbow Dash both wore dresses they had previously worn to the Grand Galloping Gala, while Tom was simply in a button-down shirt and slacks. Rarity, however, was wearing a long black dress that emphasized her curves. She definitely looked the part of the femme fatale. As they entered the hall, they noticed Applejack was there, also wearing a previous gala dress. Applejack? Twilight called out, making the farm pony jump a bit. Fancy meeting you here, Twi, she replied, stammering. She turned to the others as her heart sank as she blanched in embarrassment. You're never gonna let me live this down, are ya? She groaned to Rainbow Dash. Hey, I'm here too, you know, Dash replied. Why don't we just hang out? I guess that'd be nice, Applejack replied shyly. They didn't notice Rarity was observing them from a distance. Two souls drift off like two ships into the night. Both so different, yet more alike than either would admit. Eyes like opposite poles of a magnet, forcing them to not part this evening. Who will give in to the undeniable Celestia! How much mayo are on these shrimp puffs? The fashionista cried, tearing off to give some unfortunate server a piece of her mind. As she turned, however, she noticed a strange trail of pink powder leading from the punch bowl. What? As she said that, she noticed that most of the attendees had the same punch in their cups. Tom just walked around nervously. A lot of the mares were eyeing him with some interest, but also some trepidation, while most of the stallions either paid him no mind or glared. He sighed and was about to take a sip of his drink. I found you! You can't run away this time, Mr. Human! A mint-colored blur tackled the human to the ground, knocking the punch cup far away from him. It was Lyra, and she was currently straddling Tom, while he was sprawled out onto the floor, dazed. Grandma said this, Ore Sanjo, he wheezed out in a daze. Oh my gosh! Twilight ran over, accidentally dropping her punch. She pushed Lyra off the dazed Tom. Tom, are you all right? Speak to me! She shook him. Ow. He started rubbing his head. Lyra Heartstrings, you apologize to him right now, Twilight commanded. But the mint pony's eyes were full of tears. Oh no, I am so sorry, she cried, grabbing the human in a bear hug. I was just excited to meet a real human. I didn't want to hurt you. Too tight, Tom wheezed. Twilight magically grabbed Lyra and pried her off. Lyra, I know you're excited about him and all, but show some restraint, Twilight complained. Tom stood up and dusted himself off. That would be appreciated next time, Miss... Oh, my name's Lyra Heartstrings, but you can just call me Lyra. The mint pony cheerfully introduced herself. I'm Ponyville's #1 anthropologist. Tom held out his hand. Well, it's very nice to meet you, Lyra. Lyra's eyes lit up and she eagerly grasped his hand and shook it. Oh my gosh, human hands! Lyra squeed. Tom just sighed. What have I just unleashed? The party continued in full swing, stallions and mares mingling and flirting, and some even dancing. One such mare was sitting down near the wall, sipping at her punch. But she started to hear something unusual. What's that noise? Sounds like a violin. Feel sleepy, she droned, passing out shortly after. Others around began to start dropping, one after the other, upon hearing the sound. What's going on? Twilight shrieked. Tom was currently supporting Lyra, who had fallen asleep and was snoring contently in his arms. Shh! Tom closed his eyes to focus. He could hear the tones of a violin being played from somewhere. I hear a violin. But where's it coming from? Tom asked, but Twilight was just staring in fear. Twilight? What's wrong? Tom asked, before Twilight shakily lifted her arm. But behind you! She shrieked. Tom turned as quickly as he could before being swatted to the floor by a clawed hand. Tom got a good look at his assailant. The being in question was a strange caped creature with a head resembling a bat, but many of its features appeared to have a pattern resembling stained glass. Its shoulders had what appeared to be small, fleshy monsters attached to it, with bat wings jutting out, and it had a belt buckle strongly resembling a bat. What is that thing? Rarity shouted. Tom stood up and summoned his driver. If I were a betting man, that's our culprit. Rider time! The driver announced as Tom quickly transformed and drew his sword. As he took a large overhead swing, however, all the lights in the building had mysteriously cut out. It was pitch black in the area. Ah! What the hey happened to the lights? Twilight yelped. She and Rarity attempted to light the room with magic, but that made the monster lunge at them both in rage. However, Zio dived in front of the two and took the attack across his abdomen. Ah! Tom roared in pain. He delivered a backwards kick to the monster's stomach as quickly as he could, to get it off of himself and the girls. Oh my goodness! Are you alright, darling? Rarity inquired. Tom grunted as he got to his feet. It's nothing. Kamen Riders deal with a lot worse than this, he explained. Still not fun, though, he continued, wincing slightly. Stay back, though. This is dangerous. Rarity nodded and attempted to move away, before a sword swung just in front of her, narrowly missing her. She fell over in shock. Wah! She cried out. Tom quickly turned and caught her. The sword's owner came into what little view they had, and it was a strange, wolf-esque monster. Where did that one come from? Rarity cried out again, but she stopped completely when she felt a tuft of hair fall from her head. Her expression completely changed from fear to rage. How dare you! I worked very hard to maintain my mane, and you ruined it! I will personally teach you manners, you brute! She turned to Tom. Dearest Thomas, if you would be so kind as to leave this uncultured lout to me, Rarity requested. I'm not sure that's... Tom started, but stopped when he was able to make out a death glare from the angered fashionista's face. Yes, ma'am, Tom quickly muttered, while turning his attention to the bat monster. The bat monster concealed itself in the darkness of the room, managing to repeatedly surprise Zio from behind. This isn't getting anywhere, he wheezed, but then he had an idea. I wonder, this O's watch would have the tuck ahead. He contemplated, but then found himself dodging a flurry of bullets and a large purple hammer. Knock on wood, he yelled, activating the watch and quickly slamming it into the empty slot on his belt, before spinning the belt. Armor time! The belt announced as a trio of robotic animals appeared and formed themselves into armor. Taka, Tura, Bata, O's! The belt sang out. Tom saw everything coming into view, the bat monster and the two other monsters that seemed to be under its control, a merman-looking beast and a Frankenstein's monster ripoff, respectively. I can see you, Frankenfishy, Tom joked, as the long claws on his gauntlets extended. The Frankenstein-like monster lifted its large hammer over its head and swung it at Zio, but he merely jumped to the side slightly, making the hammer get stuck in the floor. Zio then started hacking at the monster with the large claws, ending with a cross-chop. The Frankenstein disappeared into smoke, the merman doing the same out of cowardice. At that point, the bat monster tried yet again to sneak up on the rider, but now that the dark was no longer an issue, he managed to stop it, pushing it back with the claws. No, you don't, Zio grunted, throwing the beast off him. He then crouched a bit as his leg armor started to glow green. Zio then lunged forward at the monster, a burst of green energy propelling him forward. His claws were extended to his sides. Say-ya! Zio yelled as he slashed through the monster. The monster doubled over in pain. But then, a pair of fang-like projections appeared and shot out at one of the fainted guests. It latched on and seemed to be absorbing energy for the monster, while the victim started turning into what appeared to be glass. Crap! Zio dived at the monster again, but the monster moved faster than he could even notice. The monster had regained some strength and was now effortlessly dodging the rider's attacks. But, as fate would have it, the fangs were knocked away from the victim. It was Rarity, and in her fury, she had thrown the wolf monster in such a way that the fangs were removed. "Let that be a lesson to you, you ill-mannered fiend!" she proclaimed. She then came to Tom's side. "Thomas, darling, are you all right?" she asked with concern. "I'm fine. This guy got its power back from whatever it was doing to the guests," the rider explained. "How is this monster able to appear out of nowhere like that?" "Appear out of nowhere?" Rarity thought to herself. "Wait, could it be?" "Idea!" the fashionista's voice rang out. She then went over to what was left on the buffet table and found an undamaged cupcake. These cupcakes sure are to die for," Rarity exclaimed with an odd intonation. "I sure am sorry that Pinkie Pie isn't here to sample these." The monster then started clutching its head in pain. "I want cupcakes!" it roared out. "As I thought. That monster is Pinkie Pie," Rarity revealed. "It might be the same thing you said happened to me. Please, you have to save her. On it!" Tom pressed the buttons on the watches he had. "Finish time! O's!" Flicking the driver with his hands to turn it, he then crouched down for another leap. "Scanning time break," the belt announced. Zio then leapt into the air, and a trio of coin-shaped projections appeared in the same colors as the O's armor. Zio then kicked at the enemy, the coin shapes gathering in front of him. "Say ya!" Tom repeated, as the monster was smashed by the large coins and exploded, leaving a shuddering pink mare in a heavy coat and sick mask, and a sparking black ride watch with a yellow bezel. Zio removed his primary watch from his belt and pointed it at the other watch. "Hope this works again." A beam of light shot out from the Zio ride watch, dispelling the purple sparks around it. He then went to pick up the watch. "Oh, I get it. This is Kiva." That does explain why I didn't recognize it at first, though," Tom noted, undoing his transformation. "Because it's forbidden or something?" Twilight asked, having undone the shielding on the other guests. "Actually, I kinda slept through that class," Tom replied, embarrassed. Twilight just groaned and facepalmed. The police were called to help get all the victims to the hospital. Thankfully, even the one who had her energy drained by the Kiva monster was going to be just fine. "You did good, kid," Officer Wrights approached the human. Thanks," Tom responded, a bit flustered by the praise. "I had my doubts about you, but you've got some talent. If you ever need help from us, you let me know, okay?" she continued, holding out her hand. "I appreciate it." Tom shook the officer's hand. He then turned to go join Twilight and Rarity. They were tending to Pinkie Pie, Rainbow Dash, and Applejack. "Are they going to be okay?" he asked. Thankfully, none of them seemed to be badly hurt. The sleeping drug that the monster used should wear off in the morning, and Pinkie Pie should wake up soon too, Twilight explained. "You saved my friends again," she noted. Then she gave Tom a small kiss on the cheek, making Tom's face turn red. Tom stammered, unable to form coherent words. Rarity looked on, amused. "Looks like you found yourself a wonderful night, darling," Rarity teased. "Night?" Now it was Twilight's turn to break out into a blush. "And I would be more than happy to join you two," she continued, causing them all to fall over in shock. "Oh dear, I guess it was too much teasing. Still," Rarity walked over to Tom. "You are a wonderful hero, Thomas." "Thank you." She gave him another cheek kiss. Half a day later, Ponyville was returning to normal. The only one that hadn't woken up yet was Pinkie Pie, and Tom, Twilight, and Rarity stayed by her until she did. Pinkie groaned. "I think she's coming around," Twilight said out loud, prompting the others to approach. Her eyes opened, looking at the three around her. Her eyes locked onto Tom, and then she pounced. "Yippee!" Pinkie Pie cheered. "You're the one who beat that mean old monster that took me over, aren't you?" she kept on. "Wait, you remember?" Twilight asked. "Of course I did. It was so sad and dark in there. But then you came and kicked the monster out. Literally." She gripped Tom in a bear hug. "Ugh," Tom squeaked. "Pinkie Pie need air. You know what this calls for, right? Tom shook his head. Well, duh! It's time for a party! Huh? Tom asked, confused. Twilight just put her hand on his shoulder and shook her head. Don't try to comprehend, Pinkie. For the sake of your own mental health, just don't. Around the same time, a small tea party was happening in a little cottage near the Everfree Forest. Fluttershy, animal caretaker and element of kindness, was having tea with her dear friend Discord, the spirit of chaos. I'm so glad you could come today, Discord. I thought you'd be on your trip for a bit longer, Fluttershy said. Well, it just happened to work that way, Discord stammered. Then he grinned. That reminds me. I have a little something for you. He pulled out a small white box. Oh, a present? Fluttershy asked. Thank you. She opened the box to reveal a small, silver watch-like object with a red ring around it. What is this? It looks like a watch. Discord just smiled. Ah, this? Well, you use it like this. He pressed the button and then forced the watch into Fluttershy's body. Discord? Why? Fluttershy sobbed. But then she saw strange purple armoring forming on the Draconicus's body. You're not Discord? The Pegasus squeaked as red and white bolts of energy consumed her. Oh, but Fluttershy, I'm more Discord than that weakling you know will ever be. Have fun with Kabuto's powers. He laughed, vanishing in a purple haze. No, some pony, help me, please.